Hello and welcome to this video on study motivation. And in this video, we're going to talk about what you need to think about when it comes to concentration, motivation, focusing on your studies, and this inner struggle that we all have, to get us to write, to get us to read, to get us to study. So it's important to remember in this context that the inner is more important than the outer. And what I mean by that is that the inner struggle that you have within yourself is going to be a much more important factor than outer factors. So for instance, the study techniques that I talk about in other videos, although important, are not as important as this inner battle that we have within ourselves to be consistent, to fight every single week, week in, week out until that semester ends. To focus on our studies, to learn and to memorize. So what it takes is this sort of discipline almost to understand that you're in this for the long haul and you have specific goals that you want to reach. So this is what this video is going to cover. And the prerequisites of this is, first and foremost, you need to have a clear understanding of why you're studying. The why is very important. Then why needs to guide you. If you have a clear vision of why you're studying, you can then sort of hold on to that during the times when the studies are difficult. And there's this famous examples, and it's even more connected to the second point of having a clear vision of where you're going. So there's this famous example of a person who went up to a construction site and asked one of the builders who was building a wall. So they went up to this person and asked him, well, what are you building? And the person said, well, I'm building this wall. And then they asked a second person who's also working on the wall, what are you building? And they replied, I'm building a hospital. They're seeing the end product. In their work, they already have the vision of what this product is going to be. And if you have that vision and you're not locked into this, just seeing what's in front of you, then it becomes much easier. So you need to know, why are you studying? What do we want to accomplish? Is it simply for the degree? Is it for the occupation that you wish to work with? Is it because you want to create some meaningful change in this world? Whatever it is, you should have that. You should have a clear goal and a clear understanding of why you picked your field. So that is very important. Whether it is in a journalist who wants to write about injustices, or a doctor who wants to treat patients or to get rid of some disease, you need to have a high ambition. Whether or not you can reach that ambition is a different thing, but you need to have it to keep you going. And in order to do this, you need to set goals that are both achievable and challenging. So they need to be both achievable and challenging. So you can't set goals that are too easy, because once you reach them, you don't feel that gratification of having achieved something that's worthy to achieve. So you need to have achievable goals. Obviously, they can't be too difficult, but they have to be challenging. And the higher you aim when it comes to your studies, the higher you fall. There's a saying in Swedish that if you set up to reach the stars, well, then at least you'll reach the forest. It has a better cling to it in Swedish. But the whole point of that is, the higher you aim, the higher you fall. If you're reaching for a highest grade like an A, and you end up getting a B, well, that's fine. But if you're aiming for the lowest degree possible to pass, and you end up getting an F, well, obviously that's a problem. So what you need to do is always aim higher. You may not reach all the way, but at the very least, you'll end up at a higher place than where you started. And the second point that I want to talk about here is the gädda. Now, this is a type of fish that exists in the Nordic countries. I believe it's a type of trout. There's a story connected to this. There's a couple of researchers a few years back who took this fish and placed it in an aquarium. And in this aquarium, they divided the aquarium in two parts by having a sort of a glass wall they put in the middle. So this glass wall, or mirror, it's not a mirror actually, it's a glass wall. The fish this fish, the gädda, it could see on the other side they placed these small fishes that the gädda usually eats. And so it was trying to get a hold of the food. It was trying to pass this invisible barrier trying to get the food, but it couldn't. So it tried and kept, hitting the wall, this glass wall. And finally, the Yeddais gave up, and they removed the wall, and all of these small fishes started circulating around the Yedda, and it wouldn't eat them. And the reason for that is it sort of caved in. It sort of accepted that, well, there's only ineptitude in my future. There's no point for me to actually do anything because I tried in the past and it didn't work. And even when the fishes started going around it, it sort of decided that, well, there's no point anyway. I've tried so many times, it's not going to work. And this is true for human beings as well. If you keep telling yourself that you can't study, you can't pass this grade, you can't learn Spanish, you can't learn this or that or math, if you keep telling yourself that, well, then it's going to be true. You've already decided of the outcome, you see. And it's the same thing if you look in the animal kingdom again. If you look at something like an elephant, elephants are actually really obviously strong creatures. They're independent creatures. They're not domesticated. And in cases where people domesticate animals and they use them in circuses or something like this, they usually actually go through a pretty inhumane treatment, or inhumane is maybe not the correct word, but a very very harsh treatment against these animals. And they take them when they're babies, when they're cubs, and they sort of subject them to torture. They put chains on them, and each time the elephant tries to escape, they punish it. And then after a while, the elephant realizes, well, there's no point to escaping, so it stops resisting. And once it stops resisting, that's when they remove the chains. And now, even though the elephant is technically free, it could just, run away. It doesn't. And the reason for that is because it's already been programmed to not resist and not to try to do something. So try to get away from these mental blocks that are telling you that you can't pass a certain course, or that you can't understand a certain subject. You can understand all subjects. You just need to put the time and the effort. For some, it may come easier, but if you put the effort, it will come eventually, hopefully. And the last point is about, or not the last point, but the next point is about delayed gratification. Understanding the difference between enjoying something in the present or enjoying something in the future. All success is really founded upon this desire to reach a higher goal in the future. When you're studying, you're really exchanging a short-term pleasure for long-term success. And the same thing when it comes to your health, people who are working out. If you're working out, you're obviously doing the same thing. You're sweating right now so you can have a better body, so you feel better, so you can look better. So you're sort of exchanging the present for the future. And this is extremely important. So in this famous quote by Malcolm X, Shabazz, who said that the future belongs to those who can prepare for it today. If you want to reach a higher goal, you have to be able to prepare for it today, and to not tell yourself that you should wait or do it tomorrow or the day after. Because at that point, you'll always never be able to get something and always rely on, maybe I can do it tomorrow. And a good way to make sure that you're actually delivering is to reward yourself when you've done something correctly. So if you said, if I pass this course, I will get this result, and you can pick whatever it is, So I pick, for instance, I like cinnamon buns, so I'll say, well, if I pass this specific course, well, then I can treat myself to a nice cinnamon roll. And similarly, if you haven't fulfilled your accomplishments, if you haven't fulfilled your goals, well, then there should be punishments. There should be reprimands for that. So it could be something simple as, I can't use social media, I can't use my phone, something that you like to use, something that you like to do, which is not obviously something that you necessarily need, and you remove that as a punishment. And then you learn with the stick and the carrot method. You learn to sort of program yourself to do things because you want the rewards and you don't want the punishments. So, and then let's look at the other thing. And this is about developing habits. You become your habits. In the beginning, it takes time. If you don't have a specific time when you're studying, in the beginning, it's really difficult to force yourself to allocate that specific time. But once you force yourself to do that, and you do that perpetually, you do that all the time consistently, then it becomes a habit. And a habit is very, very difficult to break. Even if, not just bad habits, but good habits as well. They're difficult to break. And once you do this consistently over a long period of time, you start to build up character. And now it's part of your character trait. You're a person who studies this way. You're not somebody who's forcing themselves to do it. You always do it. Just like you always brush your teeth, or you always, wear these types of clothes or whatever. It becomes a character trait. And that's basically impossible to break. So this is what we want to do. We want to make sure that our studies, first and foremost, that we create these habits, and then afterwards that they become part of our character. Because the only way to reach true, successful study results are through consistency. It's not through studying and cramming the night before the exam. It's through these small battles that we take every day. Every day you study a little bit, and it's not cumbersome. It's not difficult if you really plan it out like that. And hopefully we'll discuss this in a separate video. So remember this, that it's about consistency. It's about the long haul. It's not about putting in a lot of effort in a short amount of time. It's the opposite. It's about putting in a little bit of time over a little bit of effort over a long period of time. So that's what we want to do. And then finally, you have to remember to leave the past where it belongs. Don't get, and dwell on past study failures. The past is the past. And this is what in economics they call a sunk cost as well. They talk about the idea of, well, if you have a cost in the past, it shouldn't guide your future planning. So for instance, if you're planning to release a product and you've spent a lot of money on that product, and then the product is not working, nobody's buying it, and you keep spending money on the product even though it's a failure, and the only reason you're doing that is because you're thinking psychologically, well, I've already put in so much effort, I've put in so much money, so I have to keep trying. Well, no, that's actually incorrect. You have to think about it from right now. Forget about how much money you put into it before in the past. From now on, does it make sense to continue working on this project? So it's the same question you need to ask yourself, right? If there's a subject that's voluntary that you don't like and you want to change subject, well, then you shouldn't continue on that subject just because you did it in the past. And you say, well, I've already put in these many hours into it. No, if you want to study something that you truly want, and that's truly something that you want to work with in the future, you should put your effort into that.